Hello everybody and welcome back to the ASUS North America YouTube channel. This is JJ once again, and we're bringing you guys a quick overview on the different things to consider when you go about building a brand new PC, specifically a gaming PC built off the Z97 chipset and one of the latest generation Intel Core i series processors. So when you go about building, there's a lot of different things to consider. When you go about considerations, there's everything from a motherboard to the processor to the chassis to the power supply to the graphics card and a whole lot more that you should be evaluating and considering when you go about building your gaming system. And what we're going to be outlining for you in this video is hopefully the key parameters of what you're going to want to keep in mind to ultimately get you from a set of hardware to ultimately something like this at the end goal of giving you a great system that's going to give you a solid level of operation, great performance, solid aesthetics, and overall a great experience when it comes to a PC that you've built yourself. So first off, let's go ahead and give you guys a little bit more information about understanding where we are right now in relation to the current landscape of CPUs as well as the current landscape of chipsets for building on a gaming system. So first things first, when we have to consider what we're going to be doing when we build a system, we have to first evaluate and actually define what's going to be the chipset, because the chipset's going to define what processor we're going to utilize. And to some degree, it also will help you to know what type of form factors are going to be available to you. And the form factor heavily influences what type of system you're going to be targeting, whether it's going to be an ATX-based build, such as the one that we have right here, a smaller form factor build that might be based off of micro ATX-based board, or even a smaller form factor system that's going to be based off of a mini ATX-based motherboard. Now, the Z97 chipset is really a great foundation to be able to build upon, whether you're somebody that's coming over from a fairly recent platform, such as even Z77, or maybe a much older platform like X58, or maybe one of the P-series chipsets like P35 or P45. The reason being is that it's got really every key technology that you would hope for in a current base system across all type of price bands. Now, the motherboard that we're utilizing in our system that we'll talk a little bit more about is actually a fairly, I'd say, high-end enthusiast class board, but at around kind of a mid-range price point. It's not the most expensive board, it's not the lowest cost board. But the great thing about the Z97 chipset, especially within the ASUS product stack, is you're going to get boards that offer really an outstanding level of features and functionality that complement you guys across all price bands, down to as little as about $140, and of course goes up all the way to the highest end boards, which approach about $300. But the consistency of the feature set, whether it's going to be in audio, networking connectivity, the UEFI, overclocking, component quality, and a whole lot more, are all going to be consistent really throughout all those boards. So moving things along here, we want to give you guys a little bit of insight on making sure that, of course, you're evaluating all the components that you're going to need for when you go about building a Z97 based gaming system. So there's a lot of different things to cover, and here we're just giving you a quick primer on essentially the different components that you're going to need to have at really having a great quality experience when you go about building your system, the way that it's going to operate in terms of the thermal performance, the overclocking capability, and the overall functionality and feature set that you have on the product. Now, of course, if you guys want more information on different components to recommend, looking for more in-depth overviews, as well as even a full start to finish build guide overview on what we did with this system, you want to make sure to check out the PCDIY YouTube channel, where we actually go from start to finish, taking all the components that we have here and putting them into a live build. Now, as you can see right here, we've got this really great high-performance gaming system. And first and foremost, you can see we've got a chassis, right? So you're going to definitely need to evaluate what you're going to be using in terms of the chassis. Some of the points of consideration you want to keep in mind are things going to be expandability and flexibility as what you can do with the chassis, as well as airflow. So to quickly recap just a couple of key points, the actual back of this chassis has full venting across the entire back. So this allows us to go ahead and exhaust a large amount of airflow from the back. It has actually a mesh front grille or honeycomb grille intake system, where we have two front fans that allow a lot of cool air to be brought in across the entirety of all our components, including the motherboard and the graphics card. The top here can actually be removed, where we also have the ability to either intake or exhaust air. And as a whole, we have a lot of flexibility where these hard drive cages and different aspects are modular, giving us flexibility to allow for more cable routing options as well as superior airflow. So as a whole, you can see that this Corsair 760 chassis that we're utilizing gives us great airflow, but it gives us a lot of flexibility at being able to work with our system. So this is definitely a recommendation, along with a little bit cheaper version of this, which just trades out the ability to have things like a windowed panel with the 730T, which would be a little bit more price aggressive option. But overall, just some things to keep in mind. Now, from there, you're going to, of course, have cooling. Now, you can see right here at the top, we've got a closed loop water cooling solution. This one's the Corsair H100i. So this is a double wide radiator in terms of the thickness, and it supports 220 millimeter fans and gives us great overall cooling performance for the 4970K overclocking CPU that we have here. Now, of course, you don't necessarily need to go to this extent. You could go for something a little bit more conservative conservative in terms of a closed loop water cooling solution such as a HA80i or even a more entry-level based solution, and that really just comes down to what's the level of overclocking that you're going to want to keep in mind. Now, it's very difficult to know because even though that most of these new K-series CPUs comfortably overclock to about 4.5 to 4.6 gigahertz, the voltage and the corresponding temperatures that the CPUs will run at will vary between CPU to CPU. So if you know you're somebody that's really aggressively going for higher overclocks, then of course you want better cooling, even though your CPU may not actually live up to that overclocking potential. But you're going to need to have the cooling solution to be able to give yourself that room, assuming that it does. If you're somebody that's just looking for a little bit less base overclocking headroom, then of course you can scale back. And I myself am also a big fan of air cooling solutions with different options out there that you can get at very aggressive price points, whether they're companies from like Noctua with great coolers like the U12S, U14S, or with Cooler Master where they have their Hyper 212 series, as well as a number of other high performance tower-based heatsink solutions. So you can get a great aftermarket cooling solution for as little as about $25, and of course they can scale up to easily beyond $100 depending on the cooling performance you're looking for. And for some of you guys that are wondering, the Intel retail heatsink fan definitely gets the job done at stock frequencies and even with a little bit of overclocking in place. So if you absolutely don't want to push the budget out to get better cooling, you can go that route. Now, in terms of some of the other points of consideration, you can see here we've got the GPU. GPU is going to be probably the next biggest portion to consider in terms of your system because it's going to heavily influence the overall gaming capability of the system. And what you want to keep most in mind is what's the target resolution and what are the games you're going to be playing. You really have three target resolutions at this stage in the PC gaming field. It's going to be 1080p, 2560 or 1440p, or it's going to be 4K. So depending on that resolution, that's going to define the graphics card. We went ahead and selected our GTX 760 Striker, which has 4 gigabytes of memory, is an overclocked 760 card, and really is going to handle comfortably 1080p gaming without any problems, and even to a degree some 2560 based gaming. But if you're going to need better performance than that, then you may want to consider something like a GTX 770, 780, or even a 780 Ti part. Keep in mind, it all comes down to, once again, the game and the image quality settings that you're going to be running, which would really dictate the graphics card that you're going to be looking for. But overall, this is going to be a key factor to consider when you go about building your system. Now, from there, the next option that you're going to want to keep in mind is going to be the motherboard. So you can see, of course, directly underneath this, we actually have a board, the Maximus 7 Hero. And this is really the overall kind of foundation of our entire system build because everything goes into the motherboard. And it defines so much of the integrated functionality, whether it's going to be improved networking, whether it's going to be the number of storage devices that we can have attached, whether it's going to be the ability to run multiple GPUs. All that is defined by the motherboard. So we've gone ahead and selected one of our gaming series boards, specifically the Maximus 7 Hero. And there's other offerings that we have, whether it's going to be the Maximus 7 Ranger, which will be a step below this model, but still a high-performance gaming-capable motherboard with improved networking, improved audio, and great overclocking, and very, very robust features, including outstanding fan controls. So moving over to this section of the system, we can see that we've got our storage array. So we've got 2 SSDs, and then we have here a mechanical hard drive. So depending on your system build, you know, there's a lot of different opinions out there as far as whether or not you should have an SSD or whether you should have a mechanical hard drive. In my opinion, an SSD is really a non-negotiable system in an enthusiast or a gaming-oriented system. The speed at what your system is going to post at boot at, so in terms of power on and then getting to the operating system, as well as how fast it's going to be when it comes to actually installing applications, running those applications, and also for games, even the level time loading that's going to occur when you're running on FSSD is outstanding. And overall, just the experience that you have and the response that you have at using your system, everything from web browsing to bringing up pictures to just overall using your desktop is going to be really much more enjoyable and that much more responsive when you use an SSD. But as not every single file or every single action you're going to need is going to require an SSD level of performance, we still would want to complement that with a good quality mechanical hard drive, which is what we have installed there, which is a 2 terabyte Western Digital black drive. Now from there, lastly, before we jump over to the last couple of points, we've got our power supply. So the power supply is definitely something that you don't want to compromise on in terms of the quality, because 1, it's going to actually power everything that you have in your system, and 2, you also want to keep in mind the flexibility it's going to afford you in terms of cable routing, and then 3, a lot of people forget about the silence of the power supply. You can build an extremely quiet system, and if the fan that you have actually in the power supply is very audible, you could be building the system to the point where everything else is extremely quiet, and this is extremely noticeable. Now we've gone ahead and selected Corsair's AX, which is their high performance currently, it's their Platinum series, so it's just about their highest end grade of a power supply, great thermal efficiency, pretty much inaudible under load. It's a fully modular power supply, meaning that you've got the flexibility of removing all the cables and just putting in just the ones you want. This one also supports advanced digital monitoring and control through their Corsair Link application. So it's a really, really advanced power supply. But you've got other great options that they produce in their TX series, in their GX series, in their HX series, whether it's going to be gold or whether it's going to be silver. You can really get a great number of power supplies at very aggressive price points. As you've seen right here, we've made some great decisions to go with Corsair's AF series, which offer great design. So they give us very, very good CFM, which means the cubic feet per minute in terms of the overall airflow. So one of the great things about these fans is that they offer a great deal of customization, in that you can go ahead and actually change out the aesthetic look of the fan, whether it's going to be just going with a pure black fan, you can go with a white accent, a red accent, or a blue accent. So it gives you a lot of flexibility to be able to define a customized aesthetic. Once again, that's a personal choice though, as far as whether you want your system to look like that. Now you can see that we have pretty much all the fans in the system that could be installed are installed. So we have 2 front intake fans, which already came with the chassis, the 2 fans that would be used in the closed loop water cooling solution, then 1 back exhaust fan, and then another fan down here at the bottom, which could be either served as an intake or as an exhaust. So lastly, we've got 2 items that aren't really requirements in terms of when you go about building your system, but I feel that they give you an improved overall experience and more flexibility when you go about building an enthusiast system. First off, we're going to take a look here at the top, which would be our optical drive. If I go ahead and pull down this actual drive bay cover, we're going to actually see right there that we've got a Blu-Ray optical drive. So that's going to give us the ability to read or burn Blu-ray discs, depending on the type of drive that you purchase, as well as read or burn DVDs and read or burn CDs. Directly below that is another great add-on that's exclusive for our ROG series of Z97 motherboards. And this is going to be the front base. The front base is going to be an advanced monitoring panel that's going to give you information like temperatures, frequencies, voltages. It's going to allow you to see your fan speeds. You can even also make adjustments to be able to control your volume directly via this knob right here, as well as be able to control fan speeds directly on the fly through this actual knob. You're also going to get one-touch overclocking. You have an auto minimize function that if you've got something running, you want to be able to get directly to the desktop, you go ahead, press that button, and you're good to go. You also have quick charging support via this front USB port. And with the microphone and the headphone connection, these actually use a very high quality cable that goes directly to the isolated sound design that we feature on our ROG series motherboards called Supreme Effects. This allows you to actually bypass the cable that would be normally used in the chassis for the front audio connection and be able to give you a higher level of sound quality that's isolated and minimizing on any type of interference or factors that can impact sometimes the front quality of your headphone and your microphone. So all the way around, this front base gives you an improvement in a lot of different ways with a lot of flexibility and a lot of functionality. So it's a great complement to this type of system build. So lastly, we're going to go ahead and talk a bit about some of the considerations you're going to have at bringing together this system all together, including cable routing considerations. So now that we've pretty much discussed all the components that we're utilizing in the build, when you get all this installed, which of course for more insight on actually how to get this all installed, going through step-by-step process, you can make sure to check out the complete start to finish build video that we've done on the ASUS PC DIY YouTube channel. You want to consider things like cable routing. And for cable routing, of course, once again, highlighting the decision for a great quality chassis is going to make a big difference here. Of course, having, all the cutouts and the spacing that's going to allow us to go ahead and route all our cables efficiently and effectively, and also allow us to have a great aesthetic in mind is really something that's done great with this chassis that we've gone ahead and selected. As you can see here, we've got the ability to go ahead and route all the PSU cabling directly right here, keep it nice and tight and clean. We've got more than enough openings for everything from our motherboard power to our PCI Express power. We've gone ahead and even elegantly routed the cables from our optical drive in our front base through the actual side optical drive tray through the back of the chassis. And we're going to go ahead and show you some of those points in consideration. Now, as you can see right here, I also have gone ahead and utilized something that I tend to prefer. A lot of people use zip ties. I'm not a big fan of zip ties. I tend to use Velcro. I find that it looks a little bit cleaner. You can get a lot of different colors, and it's also reusable as opposed to a zip tie. Sometimes if you tie it, you get it all tight and it's not in the right spot, or you need to mess around with it, you're going to have to cut it and you're going to have to buy another zip tie. You're going to have to reuse zip ties. I find it's kind of wasteful and it's a little bit environmentally hazardous. While with a Velcro, I can keep using these over and over again. Most of the time in my builds, I tend to use black, because black pretty much goes with everything. But for here, I wanted to keep with a little bit of a red aesthetic, so I went with red. So we can take a look at that. But let's go ahead and take the side panel off on the back and take a look at some of the considerations that we kept in mind when we were routing some of our cables. Okay, so here we've gone ahead and swung open the back side panel for the chassis. You can see what we've got in terms of our cable routing. Now this was done very quickly, actually in a period of probably less than 10 minutes, so it's not going to be the absolute best cable routing, but as you can see from previously when we were taking a look at the other side and taking a look at the inside of the system, it looked pretty clean and looked well laid out. And so all we've pretty much tried to do here is not for one, take all the cables and bunch them up into a single strand. That's a very important thing that a lot of sometimes users, they tend to try to just take a whole bunch of them and strip them into one really big kind of snake of a cable. And the problem with that is just kind of like a python. It gets really big and too difficult to deal with and too difficult to manage, especially when you consider the depth or the amount of space that you have in between the back of this board right here and this portion of the chassis where the actual door is going to come over. So you want to make sure that essentially that your thickest cable in terms of its cable spacing is not any thicker than that space. And that's a very important consideration. Corsair has done a great job at giving you actually a little bit more space than traditionally available to you so that you can go ahead and have a little bit thicker bunching of cables, but keep in mind that that's one thing you want to do. Also, the other reason why you don't want to have them all bunched together and you want to be a little bit intelligent about how you route these cables is going to be for the flexibility of expanding or making adjustments to these cables, whether you add maybe in another storage device over time, under the graphics card. Even try to think about those things. Maybe if you're going to add another graphics card at a later date, try to make sure that maybe you've run that extra cable to that location, but you're not utilizing it. So then that way, if you install the graphics card, all you need to do is pull it through and then connect it to the graphics card versus having to untile these, pull it out, and then retie them and make it more complicated for you. So try to give yourself maybe a little bit of flexibility for maybe an extra fan, an extra SSD, an extra mechanical hard drive, an extra graphics card. Hopefully you've been able to find a good amount of information on here on what you're going to need to know if you're going to be going about pursuing a gaming system. And even though we've gone ahead and predominantly focused once again on an ATX-based system, so a larger type enthusiast and gaming system, pretty much everything we've talked about applies to a small form factor, micro ATX, as well as an ultra small form factor, mini ATX. The main differential is going to be that you're not going to have as much expansion capability on whether it's going to be maybe running the ability to have 2 graphics cards or more types of expansion cards, or maybe there's going to be a little bit of compromise on storage. But as you also see in a lot of the products that we offer in that space, those boards have really been maximized to have a high level of integration and flexibility to really have very little that you're really compromising on, so you still really get a truly enthusiast class system. So all the way around, whether you're going to be building an ATX, micro ATX, or mini ATX system, ASUS has a wide range of components that complement that, even outside of what we've talked about, whether it's going to be in your monitors, whether it's going to be your networking equipment, or any number of other types of devices. So as always, if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, or feedback, we'd love to see them here on the channel. So make sure and comment, and you can also feed back to us directly at our social media channels like ASUS North America's Facebook and ASUS North America Twitter. And we'd love to hear your guys' comment on additional content you'd love to see here on the channel as well. So with that, as always, take care, take it easy, and don't forget to subscribe.